I was standing at the altar looking into my bride's eyes when my father, the man who raised me for 28 years, stood up and destroyed my entire world with 12 words. He's not really my son. Let me back up just 30 seconds because you need to understand what that moment felt like. 100 of Connecticut's wealthiest families sitting in perfect rows of white chairs, the June sunshine filtering through the oak trees of our estate, and Amelia, beautiful, radiant Amelia, holding my hands while the officiant spoke about eternal love. I was Holden Westbrook, son of Vernon Westbrook, heir to a $90 million real estate empire. In exactly 3 minutes, I would be married to the woman I loved. Life was perfect. Then came those 12 words. Hello, friends. Before we dive into today's story, please help me grow this channel by subscribing, sharing this video with others, and don't forget to hit that like button. Now, let's get started with our story. My name is Holden, and this is the story of how I lost everything and found myself on what should have been the happiest day of my life. But first, you need to know the players in this tragedy, because every single one of them matters. Vernon Westbrook, my father, or the man I called father, built his fortune from his father's modest real estate firm into an empire. A silver-haired, with eyes like a winter storm. He commanded every room he entered. He taught me to tie a tie, throw a curveball, and negotiate a business deal. He also kept the biggest secret of my life for nearly 3 decades. My mother, Bethany Westbrook, was Greenwich royalty even before she married Vernon. Blonde, elegant with a smile that could light up a charity gala, but never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. I thought that was just her way. Turns out guilt looks a lot like distance when you're keeping a secret that big. Then there's my sister Sloane, 3 years older, twice as sharp, and the one who actually deserved to run the family business. While I was designing buildings, she was dissecting profit margins and expansion strategies. She used to joke that I got the artistic gene, and she got the business one. Neither of us knew how literally true that was. My bride, Amelia Thornfield, worked as a pediatric nurse at Yale New Haven Hospital. We met when I was designing the new children's wing. She fought me on every design choice until I realized she was right about all of them. That's when I knew I had to marry her. She had this way of seeing straight through, pretense to what really mattered, or so I thought, until she ran from our wedding. The ceremony was happening at the Westbrook estate in Greenwich. 50 acres of perfectly manicured grounds that had been in Vernon's family for 3 generations. The rose garden where we stood had been my grandmother's pride, and Joycer, she used to tell me that roses were like family. Beautiful, but they'd draw blood if you weren't careful with them. Standing beside me as my best man was Deacon Pike. We'd been friends since we were 7 when his family moved in next door. Their money was new. Ours was old. Vernon never let Deacon forget it. But I didn't care. Deacon was the brother I chose. Even if I already had a sister who shared my blood, or so I thought. The officiant had just reached the part everyone jokes about, but nobody expects to matter. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. That's when I heard the chair scrape against the stone patio. The sound was like nails on glass in the perfect silence of the moment. Every head turned. Vernon Westbrook was standing up. "Dad," I said, and I actually laughed. "This better be one of your jokes." Vernon wasn't smiling. His face looked carved from granite, and when he spoke, his voice carried the same weight he used in boardrooms when he was about to destroy a competitor. "I have something to say," he announced, and my blood turned to ice water in my veins. My mother's face went white. "Vernon, please, not now." "If not now, when?" Vernon's voice boomed across the garden. "When he has children? When he's running my company? When he's spent his whole life living a lie?" Amelia's grip on my hands tightened. "Holden, what's happening?" "Holden," Vernon said, and the way he said my name made it sound like a curse. "You're not my biological son. Your mother had an affair 29 years ago. I've known since you were born, but I kept quiet. I raised you as mine." The gasp that ran through the crowd sounded like wind through the trees, except wind doesn't judge you. $100. The faces turned to stare at me. The imposter in a tuxedo, the fake heir to the Westbrook throne, and outside, though I didn't know it yet, a limousine was already waiting with the truth about who I really was. That morning had started like a dream. I woke up in my childhood bedroom at the Westbrook estate, the same room where I'd built Lego cities as a kid, dreaming of becoming an architect. The June sunshine streamed through the windows, and for a moment I just lay there thinking about how perfect life had become. At 28, I was everything Vernon Westbrook had raised me to be. I'd graduated from Yale with honors, gotten my architecture degree from Harvard, and designed 3 buildings that were already getting attention in Architectural Digest. But more than that, I was about to marry Amelia, who somehow made all those achievements feel secondary to the simple joy of making her laugh over morning coffee. Rise and shine. Sleeping Beauty. Deacon burst through my door, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing half of his tuxedo. Big day, my friend. You ready to give up your freedom? Ready to start my life, actually, I said, taking the coffee gratefully. That's disgustingly romantic, Deacon said. Remember when you swore you'd never get married before 40? That was before I met someone who argued with me about the placement of windows in a pediatric ward, and turned out to be completely right. My mother knocked and entered, already dressed in a pale blue dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. "How's my handsome son?" she asked, but there was something in her voice, a tightness I attributed to wedding emotions. "I'm good, Mom. You okay?" She crossed the room and started fussing with my hair, even though I hadn't even showered yet. "Your father's been in his study all morning. You know how he gets at big events. Always has to feel in control. He's not giving a business presentation." I laughed. "He just has to sit there and watch me get married." My mother's hand stilled for a moment. "Yes, just watch." Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The way she held me a little too long when she hugged me. The way she kept starting sentences and then stopping. The way she looked at me like she was memorizing my face. "Mom, seriously, are you okay? I'm proud of you," she said suddenly. "Whatever happens, always remember that I'm proud of you. Whatever happens." "Mom, it's a wedding, not a war." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, I'm just being sentimental. After she left, Deacon watched me carefully. "Your family's being weird today, even by Westbrook standards. They're always weird," I said, heading for the shower. "Have you met my family?" The truth was the Westbrooks were American royalty, at least in Connecticut. Vernon's grandfather had started with a single apartment building in Hartford. Vernon's father had turned it into a modest real estate firm. But Vernon had transformed it into an empire. Shopping centers, office complexes, luxury condos from Boston to D.C., 90 million and counting. As I got dressed, I could hear the orchestra warming up in the garden below. Sloane knocked and came in looking stunning in her maid of honor dress. "Baby brother," she said, using the nickname I'd always hated. "You clean up nice." "Thanks for everything, Sloane. I know you basically planned this whole thing." "Amelia planned it. I just executed her vision." She paused. "You know I love you, right?" "Okay, what is wrong with everyone today?" I asked. "You're all acting like someone died. Can't we just be emotional? Our little Holden is getting married." She helped me with my cufflinks. "The ones that had belonged to our grandfather, you know," she said quietly. "No matter what, you'll always be my brother." "Of course I will, Sloane." "You're scaring me. I'm just saying blood doesn't make family, love does." At the time, I thought she was being philosophical. Now I know she was trying to tell me something without telling me. Sloane had always been the smarter one, but even she couldn't figure out how to stop what was coming. The guests started arriving around 2 when I was on the Vanderbilts. The Rockefellers, old names, old money, old traditions. My Uncle Ford clapped me on the back and said, "You're doing the family proud. Son." My cousins made jokes about ball and chain. Everyone acted normal except for my own immediate family, who moved through the crowd like they were walking to a funeral. I stood at the altar at 3 sharp, watching the garden fill with roses and sunshine and people I'd known my entire life. Deacon stood beside me, making jokes to keep me calm. The string quartet began playing, and everyone turned to watch for Amelia. This was supposed to be the beginning of my perfect life. Instead, it was the end of everything I thought I knew about myself. The string quartet shifted into the wedding march, and there she was. Amelia appeared at the garden entrance, her dress catching the afternoon light like something out of a fairy tale. Her father walked beside her, But I only had eyes for her. She smiled at me, that private smile that said, "Can you believe we're actually doing this?" And my heart felt too big for my chest. Everything was perfect for exactly 7 more minutes. The officiant, Reverend Morrison, had known our family for 20 years. He'd presided over Sloane's confirmation, my grandmother's funeral, and now my wedding. His voice carried across the garden as he spoke about love, commitment, and the sacred bonds of marriage. "Do you, Amelia Grace, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," she said, squeezing my hands. "Do you, Holden Vernon, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," I said, meaning it with every cell in my body. "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The silence that followed should have lasted 2 seconds, maybe 3, just enough for the Reverend to move on to the next part. Instead, I heard that chair scrape against stone. "Vernon." Westbrook stood up. "I have something to say." The entire garden turned to look at him. My first thought was that this had to be some kind of joke. Vernon had a cruel sense of humor sometimes, especially after a few drinks, but he was stone cold sober, and his face looked like thunder. "Dad, what are you doing?" I asked, still trying to smile, still trying to salvage the moment. "Something I should have done years ago," he said. "Holden, you're not my biological son." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped back, nearly stumbling on the altar steps. "Your mother had an affair 29 years ago," Vernon continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the garden. "I've known since you were born, but I kept quiet. I raised you as mine. Vernon, please." My mother stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Not like this." "Then how, Bethany?" Vernon's voice turned vicious. "Should I have told him at Christmas, his college graduation? There's never a good time to tell someone their whole life is a lie." Amelia's hands went slack in mine. "What is he saying, Holden? What is he talking about?" "I don't know," I said, but my voice sounded strange, distant. "Dad, stop this. Don't call me that," Vernon snapped. "I'm not your father. Your father was some artist your mother was sleeping with while I was building this empire." The crowd erupted in whispers, a sound like wasps swarming. I saw faces I'd known my whole life looking at me with shock, pity, and worst of all, curiosity, like I was some creature in a zoo. "Tell him, Bethany," Vernon commanded. "Tell him about Theodore Ashford. Tell him how you begged me to raise another man's child." Theodore Ashford. The name meant nothing to me, but it must have meant everything because my mother collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. "Is it true?" I asked her. "Mom, look at me. Is it true?" She looked up, her perfectly applied makeup running in streams. "Holden, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times." The ground felt like it was tilting. In years of calling, Vernon Dad, 28 years of being Holden Westbrook, 8 years of lies. "But here's the best part," Vernon said, and his smile was terrible. "The Westbrook fortune, all 90 million of it, will pass only to true Westbrook blood, to Sloane. Holden gets nothing. 0. Not the trust fund, not the company position, not even the car I bought him for his 16th birthday. "Dad, stop," Sloane shouted, standing up. "This is cruel. He's your son in every way that matters." "He's not my son at all," Vernon said coldly. "He's a cuckoo bird I've been raising in my nest." I looked at Amelia, hoping to find something solid to hold on to in her eyes. Instead, I saw fear, confusion, and something worse, disgust. "You knew?" She asked me. "You had to have known something." "I didn't." "Amelia, I swear I didn't know." She pulled her hands away from mine. "Your whole family knew. They all knew except you." "I can't do this," she said, backing away. "This is insane. Your father just announced you're not even who you say you are. What else don't I know? What else have you lied about?" "I never lied. I didn't know. I need to think. I need space. I can't do this right now." She gathered her dress and ran back down the aisle, her veil floating behind her like a ghost. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood at the altar, watching Amelia disappear into the house, her white dress the last thing I saw before the door slammed shut. 100 people stared at me, waiting to see what Holden Westbrook, no, what Holden nobody would do next. "Amelia, wait." I started to follow her, but Vernon's voice stopped me cold. "Let her go. Boy, she's too good for you anyway. A real Thornfield married to a bastard." Her family would never recover from the shame. Something snapped inside me. I turned back to face him. This man who had raised me, taught me, pretended to love me for 28 years. You waited until my wedding day. My voice was surprisingly steady. You held on to this secret for almost 3 decades, and you chose today to reveal it. You needed to know your place, Vernon said, adjusting his cufflinks like we were having a business discussion. I couldn't let you marry that girl under false pretenses. She deserves to know what she was getting into. False pretenses. Didn't know. How could I be lying about something I didn't even know? Ignorance doesn't change facts. You're not a Westbrook. You never were. Deacon stepped forward from his position as best man. Mr. Westbrook, with all due respect, this is sick. You raised him. You called him son. You can't just erase that. Watch me, Vernon said coldly. Security will escort him off the property within the hour. He's no longer welcome in any Westbrook home or business. My mother finally found her voice. Vernon, you can't do this. He's innocent in all of this. Punish me if you want, but not Holden. You, Vernon laughed, and it was an ugly sound. You think this is punishment? This is mercy. I could have exposed your affair 28 years ago. I could have divorced you and left you with nothing. Instead, I raised your bastard and gave him every advantage. The best schools, the best opportunities, everything a real son would have gotten. And this is how you thank me? By telling the truth, I asked. You think you deserve gratitude for lying? The crowd was absolutely silent now, hanging on every word. I saw my Uncle Ford whispering to his wife. My cousins were recording on their phones. The Vanderbilts were already heading for their cars, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Sloan pushed through the crowd and stood beside me. Holden, don't listen to him. You're my brother. You'll always be my brother. Your half-brother, Vernon corrected. And if you continue to associate with him, Sloan, you'll lose your position in the company. You're threatening me now? Sloan asked, incredulous. Your actual daughter? I'm protecting the family legacy, something you should understand if you want to inherit it. I looked around the garden, at the roses my grandmother had planted, at the gazebo where Sloan and I had played as children, at the house where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway. Every memory was tainted now, poisoned by the knowledge that I'd never really belonged here. You want to know something, Vernon? I said, and I made sure to use his first name. You're right, I'm not your son, because no son of yours would have turned out decent. No son of yours would have known how to love someone properly. You did me a favor by not being my real father. His face turned purple. You ungrateful. Little grateful for what? For the humiliation? For waiting until the most important day of my life to destroy it? For making sure everyone I've ever known would witness my disgrace? I pulled off the boutonniere and threw it at his feet. Keep your name. Keep your money. Keep all of it. It was never mine. Anyway, I started walking down the aisle, not running. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me run. Behind me, I heard voices calling my name. Deacon, Sloan, even my mother, but I didn't stop. If you walk away now, you get nothing, Vernon shouted. Not even your personal belongings, nothing. I turned back one last time. I'd rather have nothing as myself than everything as your son. The crowd parted as I walked through them. Like I had something contagious. Maybe I did. Maybe scandal was infectious and they didn't want to catch it. Their whispers followed me like a swarm of locusts. Did you know? The poor boy. Bethany must be mortified. 90 million gone. Who's Theodore Ashford? I made it to the front of the estate before I realized I had no car, no phone, no wallet. Everything was inside. Vernon had planned this perfectly. Even my humiliation had been architected for maximum impact. I stood there in my tuxedo on the side of the road, a man with no name, no family, no future. That's when I saw the limousine approaching. The black limousine glided to a stop beside me, its engine purring like an expensive cat. The rear window rolled down smoothly, and I found myself looking at a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant twist. Her eyes stopped me cold. They were my eyes, the same unusual green with gold flecks that I'd never seen in Vernon or Bethany. Holden Westbrook? She asked, though something in her tone suggested she already knew the answer. I don't know who I am anymore. I said honestly, but yeah, that used to be me. She opened the door and stepped out. She was tall, graceful, wearing a navy dress that whispered money but didn't shout it. My name is Cordelia Ashford. I was your father's sister. The words hit me like a second blow. Theodore Ashford. Vernon mentioned that name. Yes, Theo. Her voice softened when she said his name. He died 3 years ago, but he knew about you. He spent his final months making sure you'd be taken care of when this day came. He knew this would happen. He knew Vernon Westbrook well enough to predict it. Men like Vernon can't let perceived slights go unpunished. Raising another man's son, that would eat at him until he found the perfect moment to exact his revenge. She handed me a manila envelope thick and heavy with documents. My hand shook as I took it. What is this? Your inheritance. Your real inheritance. Cordelia's eyes were kind but serious. Theo was a successful artist. Very successful. Actually, his paintings hang in museums across the world. When he found out about you, he changed his entire will. I opened the envelope. Inside were legal documents, bank statements, property deeds, and photographs. The photographs made me stop breathing. It was like looking at myself in 20 years. The same angular face, the same unruly dark hair, the same eyes that Cordelia shared. He looked for you, Cordelia continued, hired private investigators, found out that Bethany had disappeared from his life without explanation 29 years ago. She was pregnant with you and terrified. Vernon had offered her a deal. Marry him, let him raise you as his own, and you'd want for nothing or keep you in struggle as a single mother with no support. She chose Vernon's money. She chose what she thought was best for you. Theodore had no money back then. He was a struggling artist, living in a studio apartment. Vernon was already wealthy, established, offering stability. I found a handwritten letter in the envelope, the paper soft with age like it had been handled many times. The first line read, "My dear son, if you're reading this, then you know the truth, and I can finally speak to you honestly. Read it later," Cordelia said gently, "when you're alone. But know this. He loved you without ever meeting you. He followed your career, collected every article about your architecture projects. He said you inherited his artist's eye, but found a way to make art that shelters people. How much did he leave me?" The question felt crass, but I needed to know if I'd have anywhere to sleep tonight. Everything. The paintings in private collections worth about $12 million, the estate in France, the brownstone in New York, the cabin in Vermont, the investment portfolio he built from his art sales, another $18 million after taxes and fees. You're looking at around $30 million, not $90 million like the Westbrook fortune. But it was mine, actually mine. There's more, Cordelia said. You have sisters, half-sisters, Penelope and Juniper. They're artists too. And they know about you, they want to meet you. Behind us, I heard footsteps running. Deacon and Sloan had followed me out. "Holden," Sloan called. "Don't leave like this." I turned to face them. My sister and my best friend, the two people who'd stood by me in that garden of horrors. "I have to go," I said simply. "Where?" Deacon asked. "You don't have anywhere to go." I looked at Cordelia, who nodded slightly. "Actually, I do. I have a father who left me everything. I have an aunt who came to find me. I have sisters I've never met. I have a whole life I never knew existed." Sloan was crying now. "You're still my brother. I don't care what Dad says. I know. And you're still my sister, but I can't go back there. I can't be in that house, in that life, knowing it was all a performance. What about Amelia?" Deacon asked. "She ran. When I needed her most, she ran. That tells me everything I need to know." Cordelia stepped forward. "The car is waiting. Holden, the choice is yours, but if you come with me, you'll learn who Theodore Ashford was, who you really are, who you could become without the Westbrook name hanging around your neck like a noose." I looked back at the estate one last time. Through the gates, I could see the wedding guests dispersing, the scandal already spreading through Greenwich society like wildfire. Tomorrow I'd be the talk of every country club and charity board, but tonight, I had somewhere else to be. Months later, I stood in my new Manhattan apartment, watching the city wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows, the brownstone Theodore, had left me was worth $8 million alone, but it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the walls covered in his paintings, explosions of color and emotion that felt like conversations with the father I'd never met. My phone buzzed with a text from Sloan. Dad's miserable mom finally served him divorce papers yesterday. She's taking half of everything. We met for coffee that afternoon at a small cafe in Soho, far from the Westbrook territory of Greenwich. Sloan looked tired, but somehow lighter, like she'd been carrying a weight she'd finally put down. "How's Mom?" I asked. "She's in therapy 3 times a week. The guilt was eating her alive. She wants to see you when you're ready. Maybe someday." "Not yet." "And Vernon?" Sloan laughed, but it was bitter. "He's alone in that massive house, rattling around like a ghost. The board is questioning his judgment after the wedding scandal. Turns out publicly humiliating someone at a society wedding is bad for business. Who knew?" "What about Amelia?" "Engaged to Harrison Blackwell. You remember the pharmaceutical heir? They're getting married next month. The news should have hurt. But it didn't. The woman who'd run from me at my lowest moment had shown me exactly who she was. Rosanna, the woman I'd started dating 2 months ago, understood complicated families. She'd been one of Theodore's art students and had stories about my father that made him real to me in ways the photographs couldn't. He used to say that art was just life with the boring parts edited out. She told me on our first date, "I think he would have loved your buildings. You create art people can live inside." My architecture firm, Ashford Designs, had launched 3 weeks after the wedding disaster. Cordelia had introduced me to her connections in the art world, people who wanted homes and galleries that understood both function and beauty. My first commission came from a museum director who'd known Theodore. The second came from someone who'd never heard of the Westbrooks, but loved my portfolio. By month 6, I had 8 employees and more requests than I could handle. Deacon had quit his job at Morgan Stanley to become my business partner. "If you can walk away from $90 million, he said, "I can walk away from a soul-crushing finance job." The real revelation came through Penelope and Juniper, my half-sisters. They welcomed me like I'd always been part of their world, teaching me about Theodore through their memories and their own art. "Dad always wondered about you," Penelope told me one evening at her gallery opening. "He had this sketch he'd done of what he thought you might look like. It was surprisingly accurate. Why didn't he fight harder to find me sooner? Vernon threatened him with lawyers. Said Bethany had signed documents giving up any claim to you. Said if Theodore tried to make contact, he'd make sure you never saw a penny of the Westbrook fortune. So he waited. He waited and painted and invested every dollar from his art sales. He said, if he couldn't give you his presence, he'd give you the freedom to choose your own path." Juniper handed me a painting that night, one of Theodore's last works before he died. It was an abstract piece in greens and golds, the colors of our shared eyes. The title on the back read, "For my son, wherever you are." Vernon tried to contact me once through his lawyers. He claimed I owed him for 28 years of room, board and education. My lawyer paid for with Theodore's money, sent back a one-line response. "Mr. Ashford owes, Mr. Westbrook nothing." The letter Theodore had left me became my daily meditation. One passage in particular lived in my mind. "I failed you by not being there. But perhaps that failure became a gift. You gotta choose who you are without my influence, without my expectations. You became yourself, an architect, a builder, a creator. The Westbrooks may have raised your body, but your soul was always your own. Now you're free to build whatever life you want with whatever name you choose." I legally changed my name to Holden Ashford the week after I read that letter. Standing in my apartment now, surrounded by Theodore's art and my own architectural drawings, I understood the truth. Vernon thought he was taking everything from me when he stood up at that wedding. Instead, he'd given me the one thing his money never could: freedom. Freedom from performing the role of grateful son, freedom from the suffocating expectations of old money, freedom from a life that was never really mine. My phone buzzed. Cordelia was texting about Sunday dinner. Penelope's making paella. Theodore's recipe. Bring wine. I smiled and typed back, red or white. Whatever makes you happy. Life's too short for other people's rules. I looked at my reflection in the window. Not Vernon's son, Not the lost Westbrook heir, but Holden Ashford. Architect, brother, son, to a man who loved me without ever meeting me. The wedding that destroyed my old life had given birth to my real one, and that was worth more than all the Westbrook millions. That was worth everything. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever discovered that losing everything meant finding yourself, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that sometimes our biggest disasters become our greatest gifts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about the moments that break us open and let the light in. Because sometimes the family we choose and the family that chooses us from afar is worth more than the family we're born into. Sometimes the truth that destroys us is the truth that sets us free.